Howdy folks, Rudros here, and welcome to a very special Lorcana video. As I have with me, he made top 8 at Atlanta, Georgia, in the first ever Disney Lorcana Challenge here in North America. Give it up for Mr. Matthew Okimoto. Matt, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Travis.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, it's so other people probably don't know this if they're watching me for just the Lorcana videos. Matt and I know each other from another trading card game called Final Fantasy. So last time I had him on, we talked all about that. But today, we're talking all about Disney Lorcana. So first of all, congratulations. Top 8 out of how many thousands of people? Was it 2,000?
I think the final number was like 1993 or something like that. It was 1990 something.
So that is an insane accomplishment. I mean, just to make Top Cut alone, I've heard some people throwing out numbers like only 1.5% of players or some insanely small number make it. So not only did you make Top Cut, you got yourself all the way to top 8. Did it cut to top 64, 128?
Yeah, it's top 64. So what they did is they adjusted the pricing because of the number of people. So originally, the Let It Goes only went to top 64 and anyone with equal score, but they raised it. The Let It Goes go to 128 and anyone with equal score, but they kept the actual top cut to play for day 2, top 64 still. So
nice. When you say equal score, like if you had the same number of points but you bubbled out, you still got it?
Correct. Yeah. So like let's say I want to say 44 points was the bubble for the 120 for top 128, and I think everyone that got up to like I want to say 149. I don't remember the exact number, but it was some decent chunk got Let It Goes, even though they weren't top 128.
Yeah, because
they had the same point threshold as everyone that got in 128.
Oh, that's awesome! Oh, that makes me so happy to hear that. I'm always a fan of giving more people prizes and more people chances to compete. So
it wasn't for the Cinderellas though. I think because Cinderella was top 64. There was people who bowled out of that didn't get a Cinderella. I think it was just the Let It Go.
Oh damn! Well. Not as great, but still, I'm glad that
it's still better than not something. Yeah, sometimes you get nothing.
Exactly.
Out, so.
You get a hearty pat on the back and say, "Well, better luck next time." So, speaking of that, you mentioned the prizes. You made top 8. What were all the prizes you got?
So I guess we'll start. I can show you. So the participation, you got the Dragonfire here.
Yeah.
Focus.
Enchanted Dragonfire.
Dragonfire, and then Let It Go is here. Once you got the top 128 or in that threshold, I don't know.
I feel like that one's art looks the most similar to its original art. Yeah, kind of Dragonfire too, but yeah, they're
the videos don't do it justice. It looks much better in person.
Does it? That's good.
And then top 64 was the Cinderella.
Ah, gorgeous,
super beautiful. And people have seen like the non-foil versions, so
yeah,
the foil version's really cool. It's hard to show you the foiling on the camera, but it's like there's like waves that go through stuff. It's hard to show you, but
yeah, that's all. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, and then the Rapunzel is this one. Is really probably my favorite is the Rapunzel.
Yeah, I don't own a single one of those normal Rapunzels, so trust me, one of my goals would be like, oh my gosh, I have to get that Rapunzel.
Yeah, and this is for top 32, and then the playmat was top 60 or top 16. That's framed, but it's over to the side, so. Little more effort to go get that one, but the playmat's really cool. It's got foiling on it and everything. There's like the hair streaks in the hair of foil and the
nice
foiling. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
And then everyone wants to see is the golden Mickey.
Yeah.
Again, the camera doesn't do it justice. You have to see it in person. It's like etched, like over here. It's like etched and everything. I don't if you can see.
Oh yeah, I can kind of see it when you tilt it.
It's like etched. So
I'm glad you said that because I think I saw it like someone took some crummy photo of it and I was like, wow, that doesn't look very good. But seeing it there already, it looks way better than.
You can see it's hard to show. Like it's better in person. That's probably why they didn't show it like online.
Yeah,
because it looks much better in person.
Very nice. But, so, are you the type of player? Are you going to sell any of that, or are you just happy to like put it into your collection? Are you a collector?
That's a hot topic because these are going for a lot of money. At first, I wanted to keep everything.
Yeah.
Just because I like to collect at least one of everything, but I think at least for everything but the cereal Mickey, I'm gonna try to sell and just use that money to like maybe take my family on a vacation or use it to travel to other events.
Yeah.
The cereal Mickey, there's a little more discussion around that with a bunch of the other players who got a cereal Mickey and what people are being offered, which is pretty insane numbers, I will say. That
I've heard some whisperings.
I think there's been a few. I think in France there's a few confirmed, but in I think the lowest offer that I've heard NNA was like in the 50s cash,
Ooh,
and that's the
cash.
lowest. That's ungraded raw, and I think a lot of us are planning on getting it graded and all that stuff. So where it settles, I have no clue,
Yeah.
but it's definitely going to be a hefty price for anyone that
Yeah, no
wants to
kidding.
get one.
Oh man, I wish one day I hope to be in a place in life that I could drop 50 plus on a
Yeah.
cardboard. Like, why not? Here you go. Here's cash.
That's when you know you made it, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I don't care about 50, 100 grand. I'll just buy this card. It's fine.
Yeah. Are you planning to go to any of the other challenges, or was it mainly just Atlanta?
I did originally have a Chicago ticket, but that was so close after this, and
It's the
put a
same
lot of
weekend as FF two.
same weekend as an FF event, and also it's like it's gonna put a lot of pressure on my family, like being gone for another weekend, 2 weeks after this.
Yeah.
Then I plan on going to Texas, and I'll be gone for like a week for that. And it's like I figured it's probably better than to stay back for that one.
Yeah.
So I ended up refunding my Chicago tickets. I'm not going to go to Chicago, but I do plan to go to Texas.
Nice.
Um, I do plan to go to Seattle. Vegas is up in the air because it's the same weekend as Final Fantasy Nets, so I have
Yeah.
to decide what I'm going to do. I'm not qualified for Final Fantasy Nets yet, so if that doesn't happen, maybe
Yeah.
I'll just go to Vegas. And then Canada, I've contemplated. It's the same weekend as the Final Fantasy Materia Cup in North Carolina, so I was going to do one of those. I haven't decided which one yet, but I'm going to do one of those.
You got a lot of decisions to make. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, unless something changes, folks, you will see myself and Matt in Texas, as I'm planning to go as well. So maybe
There's a very high chance I go to Texas, so that one's pretty high.
Yeah, that's awesome. So going back to Atlanta, this tournament run, you decided to take Ruby Amethyst. And for clarity, this tournament was still in set 3 because it was so new where set 4 came out. So you'd kind of mentioned before we came on camera here that you were very much focused on set 3. Why Ruby Amethyst? Is it something you've been playing since set 1? You just like it? Why'd you pick that deck?
Honestly, it's mostly I picked it just because it's comfort. I feel like it's the deck that I'll play the best. I feel like it doesn't have a great matchup versus a lot of stuff. I feel like it's pretty 50-50 in most scenarios for the most part. I felt like it was a fairly easy deck to know how to mulligan properly. I think mulligan's one of the most important things in the game personally. And it was very easy for me to mulligan for all the matchups. I didn't have enough time to prepare other decks and learn their mulligans and cards for the matchups, so I felt like Ruby Amethyst was the way to go. I did try to play. I do feel like Amber Steel was one of the better decks going in. I just couldn't find a list that I personally liked and one I felt comfortable with going in. So I just went with my comfort deck, which is red purple, and luckily it worked out.
Yeah, that's my comfort too. Steel Song is, especially if it sees that right curve with the Cinderella and it can just take off. So you mentioned the mulligan. You're a top finishing player. What do you look for in a mulligan?
Look for Ruby Amethyst specifically.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you have a more broad Lorcana, by all means. But yeah, for Ruby Amethyst specifically.
For Ruby Amethyst, for me personally, I like to look for it most of the time a 1-drop. You don't always need a 1-drop, but the way the deck plays, you generally like a 1-drop. Heavily depends. It changes slightly depending on what you play against, because like against the red-blue decks, you want to have like a 1-drop, a Cusco, a Surfer Mini. Like you want to get the early lore, so that at the end of the game you can squeak it out with like Castle or Goat. Against the more aggressive decks, like you want to search for have a Pinocchio or a Crab for your Cusco and stuff like that. But most of the time, it's pretty, in my opinion, and I'm not like a Ruby Amethyst like pro or anything, but like my opinion, you just want the basic 1, 2, 3, 4. Like you just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like you just want it's why I liked it is I feel like it's a fairly simple mulligan. You want to have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then be able to transition to your mid game. And that's pretty much what you look for. You want to have cards that you're okay inking that you don't want to see later. Like sometimes I'll keep double 1-drop because I'll just ink a 1-drop, play a 1-drop. I don't really want to see some of those 1-drops after turn 1.
Right.
Some 1-drops I want to see in certain scenarios, like against red blue. I don't really care for Rafiki because I don't want to quest with it, have it get 2-drop queened. So I want like Olaf or something instead. So like there's minor differences in what kind of 1-drops you want and what kind of 2-drops you want.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you just want your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then figure out your mid game.
So looking at your deck here, your top end is pretty much Medusa, Tremaine, and then the 3 Be Prepared. Was there ever any desire or interest to go into something really high like a Maleficent Dragon, or I know they don't see much play these days, but a Elsa, Dull Freeze your forwards, if use a FF term, anything like that?
For me, I felt like the green steel and green decks in general were going to be a little bit harder for me, and honestly expected to see a lot of those at the challenge.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to play off the top of my deck a lot better. And if I have cards like Maleficent Dragon in the deck, you can't play off of 6 ink, because most of the time against those decks, from my experience, you're like stopping at 6 ink. You're lucky to get the 7 or more, because they discard your hand.
That's a good point.
So I wanted to be in a position where I can top deck and if you notice, I have more Medusa than Tremaine, which I think is the slight difference than most of the other red purple. I think other red purple split it like 3-3 or 3-2.
Yeah.
I think most went to 3 Be Prepared or 2 Be Prepared. I think that was something that most red purple players came to the conclusion of for that deck, because you don't need 4. Because I think I played Rob in the top 64, and I think he was at 2. By the way, that guy is an insane red purple player. Like probably like the best red purple player I played against. He's very good. He's from TFM.
Oh, nice. Yeah, Forbidden Mountain team. So Be Prepared, obviously a huge, powerful board wipe. Obviously, this deck has no way to ramp, so you're going to have to wait to turn 7. Why, in your list, you have it as 3, and you said other people run it as 2. I'm kind of scared to go below 4 myself. Why do you think you need less of it? Is it just counter cards like the Ursula that can rip it out of your hand, or is it more just, like you said, some games are even over before you get to 7 ink, so what's the point of having a card you technically can't ever cast? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, from my personal opinion, typically you don't want to be the one to have to be prepared in the mirror or any red. Like you don't want to have to be the one that's be preparing, because I feel like you're behind.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want to see them early against green, because they're just going to get Ursula. They're kind of a dead card. The expected meta, like even in like against Amber Steel, what if they only rolled it out of your hand or bare necessities? Like I don't feel like you want to see it early.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't want to see it more than once a game. So that's why I think some people went to 2. I went to 3 because there's a lot of scenarios where it's like, man, if I just top deck this, I win.
Yeah.
So personally, I stayed at 3. But I think the reason why most of us went to 4 was because of those exact scenarios: bare necessities, Ursula, not wanting to see it early on, wanted to have a more consistent, fleshed out curve. Because sometimes you mulligan. Sometimes you need a hard mulligan for certain cards, and if you hard mulligan, you have a higher chance of drawing a Be Prepared than if you have more copies in your deck. You're going to draw it, and it's like a dead card in your hand.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
well, it looks like you've got pretty standard stuff in here. The Pinocchios, of course, very powerful for challenging targets that just need to die. We know what a beater Maui is. Minnie Mouse, Merlin, Queen's Castle, of course. The castle, I think, is one of the secret weapons against decks like Emerald Steel, because especially if they're not running like Rise of the Titans, they generally don't challenge very well. So that's and then if it's refilling your hand and they've made you discard, like, it's like, yeah, welcome to my castle. Were there any cards that were on the fringe for you, that stuff that maybe you originally put in and then decided to cut, or any of the items, Maui's Fish Hook, Sorcerer's Spellbook, a way to instantly gain lore, anything like that?
I did toy with like one Spellbook, one Fish Hook, but at the end of the day, they didn't make the cut for me. I didn't feel like they made a big enough difference in the matchups I wanted them to. More for me was trying to decide between, which is kind of funny, the guy who got second, Matthew Wright, he went to 4 Pascal. And I was contemplating cutting Surfer Mini just to go to 4 Pascal.
Wow, really?
I ended up not doing it, but I was one of the considerations I had was just because I felt like having the 1 Pascal was good, and I was like, kind of having more of those cards seems really good in certain matchups, other than Steel, obviously. But
I'll say Steel.
In some matchups, like, wow, this is actually a really good card to have. But at the end of the day, I just kept the Surfer Mini. I was just like, that's what I played with the most. Because if I went to 4 Pascal, I would have done it without 0 testing. I wouldn't have had time to test 4 Pascal. I would just be like, let's just try it.
Yeah, the Mini is your safest way to put on early lore pressure in Ruby Amethyst, whereas, Pascal's great, but he only quests for 1, whereas Mini, if they don't have an immediate answer to it, and she can just sit there and start racking up the lore, and like you said, if you're going against something like Ruby Sapphire, you're not going to beat that deck in the late game. They're going to have Lucky Dime, so you need the Mini to get you there early.
Yep.
No, that's awesome.
But yeah, most of it was just numbers. I think if you look at all the red purple decks, I would say that like 93% the same cards. There's like most of the differences is just numbers or like slight X cards, but It's mostly the same deck.
Let's see how many uninkables you have. So if we have 2 Pinocchio, there's 5, that's 7. I gotta have 4 Rabbit, that's 11 plus 3, 14. That's actually not too bad. I've seen some with way higher uninkable counts. Did you ever feel like you bricked during the tournament that like, oh man, I'm seeing the uninkables when I don't want to?
Not really. No, I don't think I had that issue. I mean, another reason why to go back on the be prepared being a smaller number is the deck has so much draw. So like you will probably see at least one be prepared even at 2 in certain matchups. And just like this, like there was turns where like, oh, this is kind of scary. I need to draw an inkable. But if you get past that one turn of like, okay, I can't miss an inkable.
Yeah,
you're usually fine because that's when you can play your Rabbit, which draws you cards. Then you have bounce the next turn, and like once you get to 4, if you can get to 4 without missing an ink drop, then you probably have Rabbit.
Yeah.
And that usually keeps you enough draws to not brick on inkables.
Yeah. So absolutely. No, it looks very good, man. Was there? So okay, now I gotta ask for P. Unless is there anything else you want to say about your deck?
No, that's
excellent. Okay, so I know all the new Ursula Return players want to know. So if you were to take this in set 4, do you know what you would change about it? What would you improve about it?
they're all gonna hate me with this the answer to this question.
That's why I set you up for it.
I actually haven't looked at set 4 too much because leading into the challenge, I'm sure other people thought the same way. Is they didn't want to get distracted with all the goodies out there, right? You see all these shiny objects going in. It's like, oh, you're gonna get sidetracked. So I actually didn't look into set 4 too much going into the challenge, and I haven't had time to look at set 4 since the challenge, which is also another reason why I was like, okay, I guess I'll skip Chicago. I'll get a little time to like digest the set and figure something out. I think off the top of my head, I'm sure there's some obvious cards for the little bit that I looked. Like that new Flynn Rider is pretty good.
Yeah.
Obviously the new Sisus are very good. I'm not saying that they're going to be staples in red purple, but I think those 2 cards stand out to me. And by Sisu, I mean the 3-drop one.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a 3-drop red one. There's also like a 4-drop one, and then an 8-drop one. There's like a lot of Sisus, but I'm specifically thinking about the 3-drop one, which probably is better off in red blue because of the ice block.
Yeah, ice block makes those cards.
I still think you'll see some number of them in red purple potentially.
Yeah.
But I think Flynn is going to be a staple in most red decks because it's passive lore gain.
Yeah.
Which is something that decks. So Lucky Dime is really good.
Right. Yeah.
You get to get in lore without having to quest.
Exactly. Yeah, which is huge. Which is so interesting because in the very first set of the game, they really didn't have any of that, and then they've like really kind of pushed that since then. So very much sped the game up. So talking about your tournament run, was this the classic? So it was the best of 2. Was that what the Swiss rounds were?
2-game format, yeah. 2-game format, yeah.
So you always get at least one game to go first, and then if you win, you get 3 points, right? But if you win both games, you get an additional points. You get 7. Is all that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
How do you like that format? Obviously, you've played a bunch of other card games. I don't know how One Piece does it, but we have games that just do best of 1, like FF. We have games that do best of 3. What do you think of the 2-game format?
This is a hot topic.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think the feelings from everyone is pretty in the middle. Personally, for me, since I do come from games that are like best of 1, like One Piece is best of 1, Final Fantasy is best of 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is like a step above best of 1. The way I look at it is it's we had 9 rounds, but it's more like 18 games.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like every game counts. So it's not like I had 9 rounds, like 8. It's like 9 games. It's like 18 games is how I look at it. Personally, if we didn't have minor issues with Melee GG, I think the tournament would have went faster, which is a huge benefit to 2-game format.
Yeah.
We would have probably chopped off an hour and a half, 2 hours off the tournament going if there was no Melee GG
that
issues.
much? Wow.
Yeah, because I mean the rounds were 45 minutes, which is different from 60, which is I think normal for best of 3. So you take 15 off, 15 minutes times 9, right, and then whatever overtime is needed, you subtract. So it would have shaved off a couple hours off, but because we had Melee GG issues, it kind of felt like a best of 3 time wise because of the Melee GG issues.
Gotcha.
But I think personally I like best of 2 in the sense that like in some matchups you're pretty unfavored and you can get lucky and squeeze a win in and you get points rather than not.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people prefer best of 3, and I think that's fine too. I think best of 3 is also fine, but just for my personal opinion, I think best of 2 is I'm probably get ridiculed for this, but best of 2 I think is fine personally.
No, be honest. I played it once at a store championship, and obviously at my locals we do best of 3. In some ways, I like best of 3 better. It gives you more chances. It kind of feels like more of a definitive win. But like you said too, sometimes you go against a really unfavorable matchup, and it feels nice to get something out of it instead of like, okay, well, I literally just got nothing. Like I made no progress. Where it's like, oh, okay, I still kind of broke even. Although to that point, man, to make top cut at these, like the amount of times you have to 2-0 someone seems very daunting to me, especially in a game that, it's a card game, so there's a lot of luck, and I think everyone knows going first in Lorcana is hugely advantageous to not going first. So that's the one part, and to be fair, I don't really know how you fix that, but like that's really tough to have to go 2-0 so many times to make top cut. Any thoughts on that?
I can add to that. So
please.
So I'll give the context. So I actually started off the tournament 10-0, which is 5-0.
Oh, wow.
Like 5-0 on paper, but I went 2-0 5 times. So I was in that small pool of people that after 5 rounds, technically we can just ID, but they call it split in Lorcana. But it's basically ID, where we can just 1-1 the rest of our matches and guarantee top cut.
Yeah.
So in the 6th round, I got paired down, so I actually had to play that one. Because obviously the guy's not going to want to split because he needs the 5-0, right? Or the 2-0 to get his 5 wins. So I had to play him. The other 2 tables, one of the guys wanted top seed because seeding mattered for who goes first, so they actually played it out. Only one table actually did the 1-1 split. It was interesting.
Yeah.
But after that round, pretty much the next 3 rounds, I would say the top 10 tables, for the most part, not all, but for the most part, all split from my knowledge. So
interesting.
That's something that was a little bit weird, but I mean, at the end of the day, the player skill at that point, they're pretty highly likely to 1-1 anyways. So it's almost like saving time. At that point, I feel like most of the time you're gonna 1-1 them anyways. So it probably didn't make a difference, but a lot of people did split after, I would say, round 6. So the last 3 rounds that were those that were locked. Basically, the threshold was once you got 5 2-0s, everyone split.
Gotcha. Interesting.
But there is a downside to that. So since I also split the last 3 rounds, I ended up going from I think I was 4th or 5th before all that splitting. I ended at 33rd, which means I was on the lower echelon or lower threshold of deciding play draw. So my top 64 match, I had to go on. I was on the draw. My top 32 match, the 64 seed somehow beat the 1st seed, so I was actually able to choose to go first that one. But the rest of my top cut, I was on the draw all the entire time. So that being said, obviously I was so the top 64. I actually won my game 1 on the draw, then lost my game 2, and then pulled game 3 together.
Yeah.
What's funny, then top 32, I actually lost on the draw or on the play game 1. Then I won on the play game 2, and then on the draw game 3.
I gotcha.
And then my top 16, I won both on the play and on the draw 2-0. And then in the top 8, I lost to the eventual winner of the tournament in game 3. He got to go first. I was on the draw for both those games. Those were some pretty good games. That guy's a top gentleman, very, very awesome player, great player, nice guy. We even talked about game 3, which is the coolest thing when you play the players of the higher skill level. When you the game's over, it's not so much oh, I'm salty I lost. It's we talk about how the game ran out. I talked about I actually did a misplay on my end. I did an incorrect attack. He's like, oh yeah, I was confused why you did that. I was like, yeah, I wasn't thinking. We're like, oh, what happened? He was like, what would happen if you did the other way? And we talked it out. We showed the top of our decks, and the game would have actually drawn out a little bit further. But so it's cool to have. It's like a free learning knowledge, right?
Yeah.
To have that conversation with the higher skilled players. So it's kind of cool to have that experience.
Does it give you a different feeling losing to the eventual winner? Oh, okay, yeah, hey, no shame in that because that guy won the whole thing anyway.
I mean, it's cool. It's better to lose to the person who wins than lose the person who doesn't, right? So I mean, that is cool. But for me, taking the loss and knowing that it was my fault. I messed up. So it's I can't be upset in and of myself. Sure, you can say, oh yeah, I was on the draw 2 games out of the 3, but whatever. That's just an excuse. For me, it doesn't matter. I messed up, so I'm take ownership of that. But at the end of the day, if I'm learning something from it, I'll take that. I would rather learn something so I can never do it again than not realize that and lose when it matters even more.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
Because at that point, I was lucky I already got the Mickey, so like the price threshold wasn't too bad. So it's like taking a loss at that point didn't hurt as bad. But if I took that loss in top 16, that would have sucked.
Yeah,
right?
it prevented you from getting the Mickey.
So
Yeah.
I was lucky that that loss happened in top 8.
So let me ask you, you brought up the plate draw. So agree or disagree, going first in Lorcana is always better than going second?
I'd say most of the time, yeah.
Yeah. Most people tend to think going first is better. At least, especially at my locals, no one has ever volunteered to go second. They're always like, yeah, I'll take the play, as they like to call it.
What's interesting is for the 2-game format is people win a dice roll. It happened. I didn't win many dice rolls in Swiss.
Yeah.
Most people actually opted to go first game 2 because everyone's like, oh, this tiebreaker 3 is like insane, blah, 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 blah. Which I get. In some decks, it does matter knowing what you're playing against to mulligan. But for a nice thing, in my opinion, about red purple is like, again, my game plan is pretty straightforward against, for the most part, no matter what I play. So like, it didn't matter to me going first or second as much as it would if I played a different deck.
Sure.
In my opinion.
No, that makes sense. Do you have any thoughts about? I've heard a lot of people talking about this since the game came out. You know, a lot of people think going first is too strong, and I'm definitely one of them.
It's very strong. I agree.
Do you have any thoughts about like what could be done to maybe mitigate that? Like, I mean, I've heard things from player 2 starts with 1 lore, they start with an exerted ink, they whatever. I just
it's hard without knowing the future design of cards, because like they can just make cards that are better when you have less ink than your opponent, less lore than your opponent, less cards than your opponent. Like there's cards they can do, and they might already be thinking about it to be better on the back foot, to make it so that it's less punishing. Like maybe there's like they make like a shift that says like, oh, shift costs 1 less if you have less ink than your opponent or something. You know, something they can do something like that, or a song costs 1 less to play if you have less ink than your opponent or whatever. Like they can do stuff like that to make up for it. I just don't think we're at that point yet. So just kind of, you know, it is what it is. It's Ravensburger is pretty receptive to feedback, and they probably already have the next like up to set 7 already made. So we're not going to see any changes to the issues. I'll say issues we feel until future sets.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's a good point.
There's nothing immediately I think that can happen, really. I mean, you could go to best of 3, you can go to best of 2 people. Everyone's going to have their own opinion. There's still going to be complaints. No one's going to be 100% happy. So
yeah, I mean, nothing's ever perfect. But one of the guys at locals, when he ever like if I win a die roll, he'll say, are you going to go first or second? And I always say, if you can give me a reason to go second, I will. So, that's great, man. So as far as the event as a whole, you went to Atlanta. Obviously, we know they had some issues with Melee. What are some of the things you loved about the challenge specifically? You know, whether it was the side shop or, again, I'm just going based off of what I heard. I wasn't actually there. What are some things you think they did really well?
Well, so I don't come from like playing Magic and going to GPs and Pro Tours and having like thousands of players tournament. Like the biggest tournament I was at a One-Piece tournament. It was like 1,400 people, which is still a lot. Don't get me wrong, but that was like the biggest. Most of the tournaments I attend, as you know, are like 100, 200 people, smaller niche games. But this was like the first, probably the biggest tournament I've been at, which was like 2,000. There's more than 2,000 people there. There was just 1,900 playing, but there was vendors, side events, like tons of stuff going on. There's probably like 5,000 people in that room or some crazy number. But I felt like PPG did a pretty good job personally, organizing everything, making sure everyone got checked in. I don't think there was any repairs as far as I
that's good.
know, which is crazy for the amount of people. They might have fixed results and manually repaired certain people, but like getting everyone up, having to repair every single person, as far as I know, that didn't happen, that I remember.
How did you report your match results? Like, was there a judge at your table or?
Through Melee. There's like in the Melee GG, I don't know if it's an app or a website. You just go on your phone.
Did you have to use your phone? There wasn't like a paper. Okay, well, that's good.
You got to use your phone.
I guess I need to get my account up.
Or use your phone, or you call a judge over and they can do it themselves for you.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there was no paper pen reporting.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Sorry, please continue.
But yeah, I think the event was ran great. Like it was crazy. It felt like Gen Con, for example, like just walking into the competitor, because they had a competitor area separated. Just walking there was like a sea of people here. We were like crawling like inch by inch to get into the competitor because there's so many people. But once that all happened, they got everything organized. It was fine. But yeah, it's crazy. Like the rush you get from being such a big player event
Yeah.
is awesome. I mean, it was nice. There's a lot of vendors there, so like people could buy cards, sell cards. A lot of vendors were buying stuff at 80% value, which is kind of nuts
Wow.
to sell some stuff at 80% value to a vendor. So like
Yeah.
people should bring stuff they want. I sold some enchanteds to a vendor there.
That's awesome.
They had a stage in the middle where they had all the prizes like on a wall where you can see with like how many tickets for the prizes and whatnot. Eventually, they turned that into the stage, which I'm sure you saw pictures of, where like the top 8 all walked on the stage, got their Mickey, and that was a crazy experience because it made me feel like like you're at a concert and I wonder what they feel like, the people who are singing on stage.
Yeah.
It's like there was like a sea of people with their phones up like this, and it was just like crazy. Like,
That's awesome, man. Oh, I'm so
glad
glad you got
it felt surreal.
Yeah, I bet. Did you take advantage of the what do they call it, like the pre-check-in the day before, where you could? Did you take it? Was that really smooth?
Yeah.
Did you think that helped things out?
I think that's a great idea because it gets, with that many people, you get to get your ducks in a line the day before, and then whatever last minute ones come in, you hand. I think it's great. I think it went pretty fast too. Like I got there early, so I was in front of the line, so I was lucky to swoop in, swoop out. But I had friends that got there late, and the line was like wrapped around the convention area, and they got through in 15 minutes. So
nice.
They did a really good job getting through all that.
Did you have to do anything the day of, or did the pre-registration allow you to just like walk in and you're ready to play?
I just walked in, and then eventually they said check your phone for your pairings for the, so that it is a paired everyone. Sorry, round 1 to get everyone sat for a player meeting.
Yeah.
Then they repaired to do the first actual round 1.
Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm. And to organize all the where you sat, they had like if you're emerald, you're like 500 to 700. If you're amethyst, you're like 300 to 200. Like they had it based off the ink colors, colored off where the tables were. So it was a little easier to figure out where you needed to go.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you got 1,000 plus seats to find,
there's like 800, 900 tables. You're like, cool, I'm table 471. Where do I go for that?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's awesome, man. So it sounds like you were really positive on it overall. Was there anything you thought, hey, maybe they could improve this a little bit for next time?
There's a few things. I mean, for the most part, for their first, I think they did a great job. So I'll start off by saying that this is just purely constructive feedback.
Sure.
I think it's Melee GG. They're smart people. The reason I feel they had some issues is because Lil was going on at the same time as our event. So that's like 4,000 people accessing the app at the same time. That's going to cause issues. Not including other areas in the world that are using Melee GG for not just Lorcana, but other games at our same time. So I think in the future, they're going to have to look into either making sure the events aren't like the challenges in the US aren't the same day as another major event on Melee in any other area. Alternatively, like looking at like scaling up their back end or something, more IT stuff to handle the load so that it's smoother. But other than that, I mean, the Melee GG was fine other than that. But that was a pretty big, that caused like a 15-minute delay every round. People had to wait for their pairings to show up because nothing was showing up. And then people couldn't report because the app wasn't loading. Like, just stuff that happens when you're overloaded. And
that's what, call me an old man, but sometimes I get that way about these kids and their phones and their technology. And that's why I asked about reporting results. Cause I'm kind of used to like a paper reporting, just like, hey man, here you go. I'm not sitting there waiting for an app to reload. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So there's that. Personally, I felt like the pricing was a bit top heavy. I mean, I guess you can say that's meant to be because the challenges are meant for competitive players. But even from a competitive player standpoint, you have to be in like the top like 2.4%, some low number to get any substantial amount of pricing, which is kind of insane.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, so like, let's say you didn't make top cut, you didn't make day 2. What prizes did you get? We know you get the Dragonfire for participating. Was that it?
That's it. They were nice. So if you do the pre-registration, we got a Flotsam Jetsam.
Yeah.
Which I think they're event promos of the season.
Okay.
They also gave us a Scrooge event promo, which is really cool.
Yeah, from set 3.
Yeah. And then a Dragonfire. So if you didn't top 128 or 140, whatever the threshold was with points, if you didn't get that, that's all you got. And what I think is frustrating for some players and some people I did talk to is there's pros and cons to this system, right? The pros is like you never know when you're out, but that's also a con, right? Like you're like, okay, if I 2-0 the next 3 rounds, I can probably get in, or I can probably get this.
Yeah.
So there's like that hope, which is great. But at the same time, it's like, well, if I don't, and who knows if I get in if I 2-0. There's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
What if I stay in, I 2-0 the next 2 rounds, I still get nothing? I could have dropped into side events, started earning tickets to
Right.
get prize wall stuff. And the vibe I got from the people I talked to was like, I'd rather just know if I'm in or out. I don't want this like dangling a carrot of like, maybe I'm there, maybe I'm not. I stay in for 3 rounds, I still get nothing. I think that could have been resolved fairly easily by just doing something as simple as like giving prize wall tickets to top 256 or top 512. Just give them some number of prize wall tickets that they can go then turn those into the prize wall, which they would have got if they dropped and played a side event anyways.
Right.
To then get something. I think that would have alleviated a lot of frustration from some people that didn't get stuff.
Well, yeah, because otherwise, imagine if you stay all the way in and then you like bubble out of 128 or whatever, and you don't qualify for the Let It Go, and you got the same prize as like the person in dead last place. Like, yeah, that's got to feel pretty bad. That's a shame they didn't have like even just a pack of cards, like a booster pack, like something.
Yeah, that'd be great too. Even sealed product would be great. I think that's just feedback that they've gotten from people anyways. Like,
oh really?
I feel like Ravensburger is pretty receptive on feedback, and I have full confidence they'll figure something out in the future. This is obviously their first run through, so they have to tweak it, right? So, but that's just my opinion. I think if they offered just something as simple as prize wall tickets or even sealed product, like you said, that'd be a nice little like extra incentive. For the people who stay in the tournament that don't make it.
Yeah. No, I like, we've obviously experienced that to a much lesser degree at FF, but you'll have people all the time that drop out after they go 02, 03. And even though I know the stores, they want to keep the crowd and they want to keep the people playing, like I can't blame that person. They spent their money on a ticket to be like, well, I have nothing to play for. Like, yeah, I'm already out of the tournament. So yeah, that's fair. I appreciate that insight. So I do want to ask you about your preparation for this tournament. Did you do anything special? Do you have any tips for anyone out there who's maybe going to Chicago or Dallas? Or how'd you prepare to take top 8 by storm?
Well, so I kind of used the set championships as like my play testing, because I felt like would be the best play testing I'm going to get. Is I had like 5 set championships I went to locally.
Yeah,
I feel like that'd be my best play testing leading into the challenge. So every set champ I played a different deck for every set champ. Twice. I played Hammer Steel twice, Red Blue twice, and then Ruby Amethyst twice. Well, once technically, but I tried to play a handful of decks I was considering at different each set champ. I only ended up getting 1 stitch, which is just better than nothing. I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like if your goal is to earn the stitches, obviously you need to play what you feel is best. But my long-term goal is I need to prepare for the challenge, so I need to practice in like a very good competitive environment. All my set champs were like 60 people, so it's like a mini regional I felt, because everything was like 6 rounds at the top 8 with like best of 3 and like grueling days back to back to back. So it's like this is going to be the best testing I can get, so I just use it as like a testing ground for that. So that's what I did. Played locally. I had a few locals that would come out. The problem was for this specific one, the timing was weird because set 4 came out. Everyone wants to go touch set 4, so it's really hard to get people to stay in set 3 to test with me. I had a few locals from the Light area, like Vijay, Kenny, Amanda, and them. Like they helped me test a lot. A few other ones like Steven and a handful of other folks that play at the Light locally. Some of them also did still help as well, but I had a small group of people stay in set 3. Also, I think a big thing, and I think for me, is having a communication. Like I talked to McGinty and my buddy John in Florida and a few other people, just theorizing deck choices. Like we didn't necessarily play, just talking about decks, cards, matchups. I think having that helps a lot as well. That's why a lot of people have these teams, right? To talk about that information. So
that's
that's pretty much what I did leading up, I think.
Nice. Well, those are pretty much all the questions I had thought of to ask you about your experience. Was there anything we didn't touch on that you want to bring up, or?
I will say these cards are going for an insane amount of value. So
I
hope that my fear is when you have a game that has cards worth a lot of value, you get a lot of people who come in from other games that want to what's the word I'm looking for? Like they're playing it for the money, not for the fun, which makes it unfun for other people.
Yeah, that's true.
Not at a competitive level. I think everyone at competitive level is going there try to win, but I think at a more casual local level, I just hope that everyone still enjoys playing locally when there's newer players coming in from other games that may take the game a bit more serious than their locals do, right?
Yeah.
So, because I've seen, at least in my area, there's been, there's groups of people who are more casual and fun, and there's groups who are more competitive. They start separating themselves. They stop going to locals when that group goes, and it's like, I just hope that doesn't keep happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Because ultimately, I want to have a big local of all types of players, right?
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we all want. Matt, thanks so much for coming on here with me today, and I'm glad you had a really good time at Atlanta. Congrats again for your top 8 finish, and good luck at future ones you're going to, unless I run into you at Texas, in which case then I hope your luck is terrible. Only in that particular instance, otherwise I'm rooting for you. Anything you want to say? Any shout-outs you want to give before we sign off?
Obviously, I always shout out to my wife and kids. She holds it down for me while I'm at these tournaments. I'm sure there's a lot, especially for Lorcana, I'm sure there's a lot of other people who have families and kids and rely on their significant other, and that's the biggest support system for me, and I'm sure it's a big support system for them. I don't take that for granted at all. So obviously, big shout out to the wife and the kids. Shout out to the Light and Greg and see right there. I don't know my local store. From Final Fantasy. He's very supportive. All the communities there for all the games, not just Lorcana, but all the games are all very supportive of everyone. It's like a mini family. Pretty cool. Shout out to all my friends and everyone that plays Lorcana. Shout out to you. Thanks for bringing me on. It's very nice to It's interesting because going from Final Fantasy to Lorcana, it's like in Final Fantasy people are like, oh, I know Oki, whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Lorcana, it's like under the radar. No one knows me. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's a very different experience, even from the locals. I have seen more. My girlfriend always comments on this when she'll come to locals with me. Is like, oh, I've never seen so many girls playing a game before. Or you'll see a lot of and there's a lot of older people too. Like there was a guy at this sealed event the other day. He probably was in his 60s, but he's just like you could tell he remembered good old days at Disney. I was like,
so cool. That's cool. That's a good thing to bring up at the challenge. I would say, and I'm not even exaggerating, like 30% at least females in the challenge itself.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is awesome to see because you don't see that for many other games.
No, most card games
rarely
do
see that. You're like lucky to see 5%.
Exactly.
So and there's people of all. I saw kids. I saw people that were much older than us.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people our age. It was like the age range is insane. It's really cool to see that like everyone of all ages is enjoying Lorcana.
And their skill levels are all over the place too, which is really cool. Like I'll see people my age who they're beginners, they're not very kind of more casual, and I've seen older ladies too, and they'll like wipe the floor with me. I'm like, oh my goodness, like she knows what she's doing,
and they take it more serious. It's so cool to see the older like grandpas of families and they're like super serious. It's like, this is so funny. It's awesome to see, like, even at that age, I got that competitive drive in them.
Absolutely.
Really awesome.
Folks, thanks so much for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below, especially if you went to one of these challenges, how much you enjoyed it, how well you did in it. Appreciate it so much. Thanks again for Matt for coming on. Stay tuned for more Rudros and Lorcana entertainment. And until next time, take care.